On this week's In Focus session, I wanted to talk to you about understanding your thoughts. Big topic, right? Wow. And it's funny because I always used to sort of part script these In Focus sessions, and I always used to kind of have my notes and sort of almost semi-read a script, but then semi-freestyle at the same time. But the more that I've done them, the more that I realize actually I prefer freestyling it a bit. Like I prefer having an idea of what I want to talk about and freestyling it. And I think a lot of that comes down to how much more free my thinking is while I'm recording, and how much more free I am to express myself around certain things. And it's part of the reason why actually this morning I was thinking about what to record, and this idea of understanding your thoughts and trying to understand, why we think, what we think, etc., came into my mind. And I've written a couple of blogs on it recently. So it's something that's kind of been at the forefront of my thinking in a weird way recently. And I think fundamentally the main thing to understand when it comes to your thoughts is that our thoughts create the experience that we're living. Without our thinking, we wouldn't have an experience. We would just purely be, right? And to dive a little bit deeper on that is we think that in life an event happens, and that can be anything, right? That can be from stubbing your toe to getting a promotion at work to going through a breakup to getting ill, whatever, right? An event happens, and we think that event creates the experience that we have. So that could be good or bad, but actually there's a crucial point in that mix that we forget, and that's that our thoughts are involved in that, right? So the event happens and it's a neutral event, and it's only our thinking that creates the experience that we then have of that event. So our thinking and our thoughts play a pretty vital role in our everyday life, right? They literally create the experience that we're having on this earth as this human vehicle. We experience the consciousness that we live through our own thoughts, right? And those thoughts only come from us, but the consciousness that we live keeps us connected to everything around us. And I think the main thing really that's really helped me, and something that I've really, really understood, particularly the last year and a half, is that our thinking that we have about anything is neutral. There's no meaning to any of our thoughts. The meaning only comes when we put the meaning on the thought through the way that we think about what we've just thought about, if that makes sense. So, for example, you open your cupboard, right? And you've got a tub of peanut butter. You just see it, you think, okay, cool, whatever. It's neutral, right? You stub your toe. Ooh, that's going to make you think something else. I've just stubbed my toe, or I'm so clumsy, I'm so stupid. Or you get a promotion at work. Oh, that's great, I feel fantastic, I'm amazing, I feel really confident. Or again, use the breakup example. You go through a breakup and it's oh, I'm worthless, no one's going to love me. To me, there's nothing different in any of those four events other than the way that we've thought about each of them, right? And a classic example that I always use is you and a friend can have an experience of the same thing, right? So let's use a film, or going to the cinema as an example. You and a friend can sit and watch a film, the same film. You've watched the same, let's call it 90 minutes of the same movie. You step out of the cinema, or if you're at home on the sofa, and you then start to talk about the film. One of you's nah, I really didn't like it. It's not my cup of tea. Don't like it. It wasn't a great film. The acting was rubbish, blah, blah, blah. And the other one is oh, it was fantastic. It's one of the best films I've seen in a long time. How can you not like it? So when you look at that situation, the event, which is watching the film, is neutral, right? Because you've both watched the same film. You haven't seen or heard anything different. Both of what you've seen and heard is the same thing. The only difference in that is the thinking that you've had around the film, and how you've interpreted the film yourself, the ideas and the stories and the concepts that you've come up with around the film and what it means to you, then creates the experience that you've had of that film, i.e. good or bad, right? So the film itself is the neutral thing. The event is the neutral thing. It's actually the way that you take your own interpretation of the event that creates the experience you're living. And I think that's a really key thing to understand, is when it comes to thought, you can have, quote unquote, a good thought or a bad thought, but they're neutral until you label them as such. A thought comes into your mind and it is completely neutral until you label it as good or bad. And then the experience you have based on that thought comes from how you've labeled that thought in your own mind. And I think for anyone who's ever, meditated and been really truly present in something, right? And this can be, through, playing sports or exercising or being really involved in like a bit of writing or painting or a project. When you're in that place, your thinking is so pure and so clear that you don't even realize that it's there. But what you also notice is that the most random thing will come into your mind whenever. This, to be honest, this even happens to me in the shower, right? Like my thinking in the shower is so wild because it's like you've removed, particularly the shower, I think it's quite an interesting one because you've removed all other stimulus, right? There's nothing to distract you. You're not putting your attention on anything other than, being in the shower and washing. And when I'm there, like I have so many thoughts that crop up and come and go and they flow and they come back and they disappear. And I have the world's best idea that's going to create, an amazing miracle in the world. And then the second I've left the shower, I forgot the idea. And it's like the same thing happens when I'm working out in the gym. It's like my thinking is so free in those moments. And the thoughts are just coming and going. And the reason I wanted to highlight that is because in those moments when your thinking is really free, anything can come up, anything can pop up, right? But until we take any thought, right? It could be anything, and we place a meaning on that thought. It's not until then that we have the experience that we have of the thinking. If you're willing to allow your thoughts to come and go and to flow and to, like I said, come, go, disappear, some might come back. If you're willing to allow your mind to do that, you're going to live a lot more freely within your own mind. You're going to live with like a freedom in your thinking. And I think it's really important because when it comes to this idea of like good situations, bad situations, good thoughts, bad thoughts, positive thoughts, negative thoughts, they only become what you experience the thinking of that feeling or the thought that you've had, right? So those things are really neutral. It's only the meaning and the story and the idea that you place on that thought that creates the experience that you have. And I think another important thing that I wanted to touch on really was something that I was thinking about while I was writing a recent blog, and this idea of us both being everything and nothing with our thinking or without our thinking, because we're basically connected as we are part of a greater whole. Yeah, we're part of a greater thing: nature, consciousness, spirit, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. Right, we're part of a bigger whole, right? And we experience that bigger whole through being here, through living. Yeah, and as I said, we experience that through our thinking, right? So we experience everything through thought. That's how we interpret the world around us, through our thinking. And that means that we're ultimately connected to everything, right? But without our thinking, we would also be nothing. Because yes, we could still be here and connected to that consciousness, that world, that universe, that spirit, that God, whatever you want to call it. But without our thinking, we wouldn't be anything, because we wouldn't be having an experience of it in the same way. We wouldn't be interpreting it the same way, because there would be no thought. We would just be. We'd be just like a vegetable. And it's important to know that, yes, okay, sometimes we might get overwhelmed with our thinking. Yes, we might get stressed out. Yes, there may be worries or anxieties or fears or insecurities. But more often than not, that's just down to how you interpret that thinking. Your worries, your fears, and this happens to me all the time. Whenever I feel fearful about something, or I feel insecure, or I feel anxiety setting in, it's only my thinking around whatever I believe is causing me the trouble that is causing me to feel that way. And when you realize that actually when you're looking at something outside of you to create an experience. So for example, let's use stubbing your toe. If you stub your toe, right, it's like, oh, stub my toe. Now I'm angry. Now I feel annoyed, right? You're thinking that because you stubbed your toe, you now feel that way. You're now thinking that way. But that's a very outside in way of thinking. That's thinking that anything on the outside of us causes the way that we think and feel. But it's actually the opposite, right? If you stub your toe, that's just an event, as we mentioned earlier. It's only my thinking that then says, oh, I'm so annoyed, I'm so angry, that really hurt, I'm such a clumsy person, that then creates my feeling of anger or whatever the feeling that comes with that. So it's the event itself is neutral, but the experience I've had of the event has come through my own thinking. And this is true in most areas of our lives. This is true in most things that we experience in life. And I think it's really important to remember that, this idea of it's our thinking that creates our experience of any moment that we're having in our lives. So I hope that this episode's been useful for you. I'd love to know if there's anything that you've got from this, if there's anything you learned, or if there's anything that's just really grabbed your attention and you want to kind of inquire more about it. If you do, what I'd love for you to do is to hit me up. If you're watching this, then please leave a comment below. If you're listening to the podcast, then be sure to hit me up on Instagram at @IamAlexManzi. Let me know what you've learned from this episode. Let me know if there's anything that's come to you that's been a new learning or an insight or something, like I said, that you want to inquire more about. Hit me up at @IamAlexManzi or leave a comment wherever you're watching this.